I was standing in my own kitchen when my son looked me dead in the eye and said, "Mom, Brooke and I have decided. You need to sign the properties over to us. It's what Dad would have wanted." I didn't yell. I didn't beg him to reconsider. I set down my coffee mug, walked into my bedroom, and called my attorney. 3 words: lock everything down. 1 week later, when Brooke marched into the bank, expecting to pull $200,000 from my grandchildren's education accounts, the teller told her the funds were frozen. She called me 17 times that afternoon. I didn't answer a single one. My name is Dorothy Mitchell. I'm 67 years old, and this is the story of how I almost lost my son, my grandchildren, and my sanity to a woman who saw my family's lifetime of hard work as her personal ATM. I'm glad you're here with me. Stay with me until the end, and drop a comment telling me the city you're watching from. Let me take you back 5 years, to the morning that changed everything. Harold and I were eating breakfast on the porch of our house in Cedar Falls, Iowa. It was a Thursday in October, the kind of crisp morning where the maple trees look like they're on fire and the air smells like wood smoke and apples. Harold was 68, broad-shouldered, with hands roughened from 40 years of carpentry. He'd built houses his whole life, started as a framer at 19 and eventually ran his own contracting business. I'd spent 32 years as an accountant, first at a small firm, then eventually as a partner. Between his construction income and my accounting practice, we'd done well. Not extravagantly, but steadily. We owned our home outright. We had retirement accounts, and over 20 years, we'd purchased 4 rental properties around Cedar Falls, small houses and duplexes that generated reliable monthly income. Harold managed the maintenance himself. I handled the books. It was our system, and it worked. That Thursday morning, Harold reached for the butter dish, and his left arm went slack. He looked at me with confusion in his eyes, tried to say my name, and collapsed sideways off his chair. I caught him before he hit the porch floor, but I already knew. I'd seen enough medical emergencies in my years volunteering at the hospital auxiliary. I called 911 with one hand while cradling his head with the other. The ambulance came in 7 minutes. Harold died at St. Luke's Medical Center at 2:47 that afternoon. A massive hemorrhagic stroke. He was gone before the neurologist even finished her assessment. 41 years of marriage ended in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. The last thing Harold ever said to me, clearly, over breakfast before the stroke, was, "Dottie, don't let anyone talk you out of what we built. Not even the kids. Especially not the kids." I thought he was being dramatic. He wasn't. My son Kevin drove up from Des Moines the moment I called. He was 41, a sales manager for a medical equipment company. Solid job, decent income. His wife Brooke came with him, holding their youngest, Emma, who was barely a year old. Their son Tyler was 5. Kevin held me at the funeral while I shook apart. He whispered, "I've got you, Mom. You're not going through this alone." His sister, my daughter Lisa, flew in from Portland with her husband and their 2 kids, Caleb, who was 12, and Maya, who was 8. Lisa's a hospital administrator. She's practical, sharp, the kind of person who handles a crisis by making lists and solving problems. She stayed with me for 10 days after the funeral, helping me sort through Harold's workshop, his files, his clothes. One evening, while we were boxing up Harold's flannel shirts, the ones that still smelled like sawdust and Old Spice, Lisa said something that stuck with me. "Kevin's going to need help, Mom. And Brooke's already thinking about it." Thinking about what? The properties, the accounts. She asked me at the reception whether you'd be selling Dad's rentals. At the reception? My throat tightened. In the parking lot. Actually, while people were still inside eating casserole, Lisa folded a shirt with sharp, precise movements. I told her that was your business. She didn't love that answer. I should have listened more carefully. But grief is a fog. It makes you cling to anyone who seems warm. And Brooke seemed warm back then. 3 months after Harold died, I sat down with my attorney, Frank Delaney. Frank had handled our legal work for 25 years. His office on Main Street had the same faded carpet and overflowing bookshelves it had when Harold and I first walked in as newlyweds buying our first house. Frank was 70, sharp as a tack, with a voice like gravel and a bulldog's loyalty. "I want to set up education trusts," I told him. "For all 5 grandchildren." All 5? Tyler and Emma, Kevin's kids. Caleb and Maya, Lisa's kids. And if either of them has more children someday, I want the option to add beneficiaries. Frank pulled out a legal pad. "How much are we talking?" $150,000 each. That's $750,000 total. His pen stopped. "That's a significant chunk of your assets, Dorothy. Harold and I talked about it before he got sick. The rental income covers my living expenses. My retirement accounts are solid. I want these kids to have a foundation when they're adults." I leaned forward. "But I want full control. Sole trustee. Nobody accesses those funds until the beneficiaries turn 25. No exceptions except education expenses or medical emergencies. And only with my written approval." Frank studied me over his reading glasses. "Your children won't have any authority over these accounts. Kevin and Lisa, 0 access. Their spouses, 0 access. You understand that could cause friction? Lisa will be fine with it. And Kevin?" I hesitated. "Kevin will understand it's for his children's benefit." Frank wrote something on his pad that I didn't see until much later. He showed it to me after everything fell apart. It said, "Client confident in family dynamics. Recommend adding successor trustee and conflict provisions." He was right to worry. I was wrong to be confident. The first 2 years after Harold's death followed a pattern. Kevin and Brooke were struggling financially. Not drowning, but treading water. Brooke had quit her job in pharmaceutical sales when Emma was born. Kevin's income was decent, but not enough for a family of 4 in Des Moines with a mortgage, car payments, and daycare for 2 kids. The requests started small. Kevin called one evening, sounding exhausted. "Mom, Tyler's preschool is $1,400 a month." I had no idea it was this much. Brooke's staying home with Emma, so we can't really cut daycare, but the math just doesn't work. I didn't hesitate. "I'll cover it." "Mom, no, that's too much. Harold would have wanted this. Let me help." So I paid Tyler's preschool tuition for 18 months. $25,200. Then there was the car. Brooke's SUV needed a new transmission. Then 6 months later, the engine started knocking. I bought them a used Honda Pilot, $18,000. Then, Kevin mentioned they were behind on their mortgage. "Just 1 month," he said. "Just a temporary cash flow issue." I covered 2 months, $4,800. Then Brooke needed dental work. Their insurance didn't cover. $3,200. Then Christmas was coming and they were tight. So I bought all the kids presents. Then Tyler needed glasses. Then Emma had chronic ear infections, and the specialist copays added up. I kept records because Harold had drilled that into me. Always document, Dottie. Not because you don't trust people, but because numbers don't lie. My files showed that in the first 3 years after Harold's death, I gave Kevin and Brooke $112,000 in direct financial assistance. Not loans, gifts, given freely, with no conditions, no strings, no expectations. I never once said, "You owe me." I never once withheld help to make them do something my way. I just wrote checks because my son needed help and my grandchildren deserved stability. Thomas, my financial advisor, noticed. "Dorothy, you're subsidizing their entire household." Meanwhile, the education trusts are growing untouched. Have you considered that they might start viewing your generosity as an entitlement? They're family. This is what family does. Family also respects boundaries. Just something to think about. I didn't think about it. Not then. Meanwhile, Brooke's attitude toward me shifted in ways I kept excusing. She stopped calling me Mom and started using Dorothy. Visits to their house required more and more advance notice. "We need family time," she'd say. "We're establishing our own routines." When I'd suggest coming down for Tyler's soccer games, she'd say they were already too busy that weekend. When I mailed packages for the kids, I'd get a text days later. "Got the box. Thanks." No photos of the kids opening the gifts. No phone call. Just a text that felt like a receipt. Kevin's calls became shorter, more formal. "Hey, Mom. Just checking in. Everything's fine here. Busy week. Talk soon." Click. Lisa noticed before I did. During one of her visits, she sat across from me at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and said it plainly. "Brooke's cutting you off. Slowly. So Kevin doesn't see it happening." "That's a strong accusation, honey. When's the last time Kevin called you without Brooke prompting it? When's the last time you had a conversation with him that lasted more than 3 minutes? When's the last time you saw the kids without scheduling it 2 weeks in advance?" I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. "She's building a wall," Lisa continued. "She controls his schedule, his friendships, his relationship with you. His college buddy Mark told me Kevin hasn't returned his calls in over a year. Uncle Gene says he hasn't heard from Kevin since Dad's funeral. They're busy. 2 young kids and 1 income. Mom." Lisa's voice was gentle but firm. Busy people still call their mothers. I didn't want to believe her. Believing her meant admitting my son was being controlled, and admitting that meant I'd failed to protect him somehow. So I made excuses. I told myself it was normal for young families to pull inward. I told myself Brooke was just overwhelmed. I told myself Kevin was fine. He wasn't fine. The breaking point came at Tyler's 7th birthday party. Brooke had texted me the details. "Tyler's party Saturday, 2:04 p.m. You can come at 3 for cake. 1 hour." I was allocated 1 hour of my grandson's birthday. Lisa couldn't make it from Portland, but she called me before I left. "Document everything. Take notes when you get home. I have a bad feeling about this." I arrived at exactly 3 p.m. with the remote-controlled car Tyler had begged for during our last video call. Brooke opened the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Right on time, Dorothy." The house was full of Brooke's family and friends. Not a single person from Kevin's side. No Uncle Gene. No Aunt Patricia. No one. Kevin stood in the backyard, flipping burgers on the grill, looking like a man trying to disappear into the smoke. Tyler ran to me screaming, "Grandma Dot! Grandma Dot!" And I held him so tight I probably wrinkled his birthday shirt. When he opened my gift, his face exploded with joy. "Mom! Mom! It's the car! The one I showed Grandma on the phone." Brooke materialized beside us. How nice. Though we did agree on practical gifts this year. Tyler has enough toys. She took the box from his hands and set it on a shelf. "We'll see if there's room for this in his closet." Tyler's smile collapsed. I watched my grandson's joy get confiscated, and something inside me went very still. After cake, Brooke pulled me into the laundry room. The door barely shut before her pleasant mask dropped. What I saw underneath was ice. "We need to talk about the future," she said. "This arrangement, where you hover over our family, throwing money around and showing up like you own the place. It's done. I'm not sure I understand what arrangement you're referring to. The one where you use your money to keep Kevin on a leash. The one where you set up trust funds you control, so you always have leverage over our children's futures." My pulse was hammering, but I kept my voice level. "Those education funds are designed to give Tyler and Emma opportunities when they're adults. They're our children, Dorothy, not yours. We should be managing any money meant for them." She uncrossed her arms and leaned closer. "Kevin's going to contact your lawyer next week to have himself named trustee. And we've also decided it's time you transferred the rental properties to Kevin. He's your son. He's Harold's son. Those properties should be his. The rental properties. 4 buildings Harold and I had spent 20 years acquiring, maintaining, and paying off. Combined value of roughly $900,000. Monthly income that paid my property taxes, my insurance, My groceries? My independence. Those properties are my income, Brooke. They're how I support myself. You have Social Security and retirement accounts. You don't need 4 rental houses. That's just greed. Her eyes narrowed. Here's what's going to happen. You transfer the properties and the trust funds to Kevin, or your access to Tyler and Emma becomes very limited. We're talking holidays only. Maybe. Are you threatening to keep my grandchildren from me? I'm establishing boundaries, something you clearly don't understand. She walked out and rejoined the party like nothing had happened. I stood in that laundry room between the detergent and the dryer sheets and felt my world crack down the middle. In the car, my hands shook so violently, I pulled into a gas station parking lot and sat there for 10 minutes, breathing. Then I called Frank Delaney. Frank, I need you to freeze the education trusts immediately. All 5 accounts. Tyler, Emma, Caleb, Maya, and the contingency fund. Lock everything. Dorothy, what happened? And I need you to make sure my property deeds are ironclad. No transfers, no liens. Nothing moves without me physically present in your office. Consider it done. I'll file everything Monday morning. But Dorothy, tell me what's going on, I told him. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, You're doing exactly the right thing. Don't second-guess this. I drove home and didn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m., I sat at Harold's old desk in the room that still smelled like his pipe tobacco and pulled out every bank record, every check, every receipt. 3 years of financial support, itemized and documented. $112,000. Wedding help, preschool tuition, car purchase, mortgage payments, medical bills, groceries, Christmas, all given freely, all given with love. Not a single dollar had ever come with conditions. And now they wanted the trusts and the properties. And if I refused, they'd take my grandchildren. Lisa called at 6 a.m. Because somehow sisters just know. What happened? I told her everything. The silence on her end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Mom, I'm going to say something and I need you to hear it. Kevin is not going to protect you. He's not going to protect his own kids. He's going to do whatever Brooke tells him, because she's spent years making sure he can't think for himself anymore. You need to protect yourself and those grandchildren. That's it. That's the job now. She was right. And it broke my heart that she was right. The next 3 days were silent. No call from Kevin. No text from Brooke. Then on Wednesday evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. We know you locked the accounts. Transfer everything to Kevin by Friday, or you will never see Tyler or Emma again. Don't test me. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I forwarded the message to Frank and to my personal attorney, Janet Rhodes, who specialized in family law. Janet called within the hour. Dorothy, this is a threat involving minor children. We're documenting this immediately. I also want you to know that Iowa recognizes grandparent visitation rights under certain circumstances. If they try to cut you off, we have legal options. I don't want to take my son to court. I understand. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that his wife will take you there first. I blocked Brooke's number. Whatever she needed to communicate, she could do it through attorneys. Uncle Gene called me 2 days later. Gene was Harold's younger brother, a retired electrician who lived 20 minutes away. He and Kevin used to go fishing every spring. Dottie. I ran into Kevin at the hardware store. First time I've talked to the boy in over a year. You know, Brooke told him I was a bad influence? Said I was feeding him negative ideas about his marriage. Gene, did he say anything about what's going on? He mentioned something about a business opportunity. Said Brooke found a restaurant space for lease downtown. She wants to open some kind of farm-to-table place. Gene paused. Dottie, the lease alone is $8,000 a month. The build-out costs he mentioned were over $300,000. Where do you think they're planning to get that money? My stomach dropped through the floor. The trusts. The properties. Combined. nearly $1.7 million in assets. Enough to fund a restaurant, a new house, a whole new life. For Brooke, everything clicked. The hostility, the demands for control, the threats. It was never about boundaries or my interference. It was about money. My money. Harold's money. My grandchildren's money. Kevin showed up at my door 3 weeks later. He and Brooke together. She wore a blazer, like she was attending a pitch meeting. Kevin looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. We sat in my living room, the room where Harold used to read the paper in his recliner, where Tyler had taken his first steps, where we'd hung stockings every Christmas for 40 years. Brooke spoke first, her voice reasonable and rehearsed. "Dorothy, we have an incredible opportunity. A restaurant space on Grand Avenue. Prime location. Proven concept. The projected revenue in the first 2 years alone would be, how much do you need?" She blinked, thrown off her pitch. Kevin answered quietly, $350,000 to start. Lease, build-out, equipment, inventory, staffing for the first 6 months. And where were you planning to get $350,000? Silence. From the education trusts, I said. And? From selling my rental properties. They're not just your rental properties. Brooke's composure cracked. Harold built those houses. Kevin is Harold's son. He has a moral right to his father's legacy. Harold left those properties to me. In his will. Reviewed and executed by our attorney. Kevin has no legal claim to them. And you know it. Legal isn't the same as right. In this case, it's exactly the same. I stood and walked to Harold's desk. Pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Placed it on the coffee table. "What's that?" Kevin asked. "Documentation. Every phone call you made to Frank's office asking about the trust structure. The incident at the bank last Tuesday, where Brooke told the manager she had authorization to access Tyler's education account. I looked directly at Brooke. The manager documented everything, including the part where you became verbally aggressive when they told you no." Brooke's face went white, then red. "I was asking questions. That's not a crime. Misrepresenting your authority to access restricted accounts is fraud, Brooke." "It's a serious matter." Kevin had his head in his hands. "Mom, this folder also contains records of every dollar I've given you and Brooke over the past 3 years. $112,000. Preschool, car, mortgage payments, medical bills, groceries, Christmas presents, given freely, no strings, no conditions." I paused to let the number settle. "I have never once used that money to control you, but now you're asking me to hand over nearly $2 million in assets so Brooke can open a restaurant. And when I say no, she threatens to take my grandchildren away. Those are our children," Brooke hissed, "and that is their money. Not yours, not Kevin's, Tyler's and Emma's, to be used when they're 25, for their futures. Not for a restaurant lease on Grand Avenue." Kevin stood up. "Mom, you don't understand. This restaurant could change everything for us. Let me ask you something, Kevin. What happens when Tyler is 25 and wants to go to graduate school? What happens when Emma is 25 and needs a down payment for her first home? Will you tell them, 'Sorry, we spent your education fund on a restaurant that may or may not have survived its first year. We'd pay it back. 70% of restaurants fail within 5 years. You know this. Ours won't. You've never worked in food service. Neither has Brooke. You're betting your children's futures on an industry you know nothing about." Brooke grabbed her purse. "We're leaving. This is pointless. One more thing." My voice was calm, but I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. "If you attempt to cut off my access to Tyler and Emma, I will file for grandparent visitation rights under Iowa Code Section 598.35. I have documentation of Brooke's threats, the bank incident, and a pattern of parental alienation. A judge will see every piece of it." Brooke spun around. "You wouldn't dare. I already have the paperwork prepared. Try me." They left. Brooke slammed the door so hard the pictures on the wall rattled. Harold's framed photo shifted sideways. I straightened it with trembling hands and whispered, I'm trying. Harold, I'm doing what you said. The next 2 months were silence. Complete, devastating silence. Kevin didn't call. Didn't text. I went from limited contact to nothing. No photos of the kids. No updates on Tyler's soccer season. No video of Emma's first day of preschool. Brooke posted on social media about toxic family members and narcissistic mothers-in-law. Her followers rallied around her with comments about going no contact and protecting your peace. Nobody knew the real story. Nobody knew she'd tried to commit fraud at a bank or threatened to weaponize my grandchildren for money. Lisa called every single day. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat on the phone in silence. And that was enough. Uncle Gene kept his ears open. 6 weeks after the confrontation, he called, "Dottie, they lost the restaurant space. Someone else signed the lease. Brooke is apparently beside herself. Jean from next door heard them arguing through the walls for 3 hours last Thursday. I felt no satisfaction, only sadness. There's more." Jean continued. "Kevin called me yesterday. First time in 2 years. Sounded terrible. Said he wanted to go fishing. Did you go? Tomorrow morning. I'll call you after." Jean called me the next evening. His voice was careful, measured. "Dottie, that boy is not okay. He's lost weight. He barely talked for the first hour. Then he started crying and couldn't stop." Jean paused. "He told me Brooke screamed at him for 3 days after they lost the restaurant space. Called him weak, useless, said he couldn't even stand up to his own mother. Said she wished she'd married someone with a backbone." My eyes burned. "Jean, he also said something that scared me. He said he can't remember the last time he made a decision by himself. Not about money, not about the kids, not about anything. Everything goes through Brooke. Every single thing." 2 weeks later, on a rainy Tuesday night, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Kevin standing on my porch, soaked through, looking like a man who'd walked through a hurricane. His eyes were red. His clothes hung loose. He was a ghost of the confident, laughing son Harold and I had raised. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. He walked to the couch, sat down, and stared at the floor for a full minute. Then the dam broke. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. You were right about all of it. The restaurant, the trusts, the properties, everything. She was using me to get to your money, and I let her, because I was too scared to say no." I sat beside him but didn't touch him yet. He needed to get this out. "When we lost the restaurant space, she blamed me. Said I was pathetic for letting my mother control our lives. Said if I were a real man, I'd have gotten those properties transferred months ago." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "And I realized she's been saying versions of that for years. Every time I disagree, I'm weak. Every time I want to see you or Jean or anyone she hasn't approved, I'm disloyal. I haven't made a single decision on my own since we got married. Kevin, I started seeing a therapist. 3 weeks ago, after the fight about the restaurant, I knew something was wrong. Not with you, with me, with my marriage." He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. The therapist called it emotional abuse, isolation, gaslighting, financial control. She said Brooke fits the pattern almost perfectly. Brooke fits the pattern. From a galding makeshing and in trading interface. My heart was breaking and healing at the same time. "I'm filing for separation," he said. "I've already talked to a lawyer. I want joint custody. I want Tyler and Emma to know their grandmother. Their real family, not just the one Brooke approves of." He reached for my hand. "Starting with you, if you'll have me back." I pulled my son into my arms and held him while he cried. He sobbed like he hadn't cried in years. Which was probably true. I stroked his hair the way I did when he was small, and I said the only thing that mattered. "You're here now. That's enough. That's everything." The divorce was brutal. Brooke fought for sole custody, claiming Kevin was unstable and under my manipulative influence. She demanded the rental properties as marital assets. She filed a motion to bar me from contact with Tyler and Emma. Janet Rhodes, my attorney, dismantled every claim. She presented the threatening text messages, the bank's incident report about Brooke's attempted fraud, testimony from Uncle Gene, Lisa, Kevin's college friends, even Brooke's own sister, who admitted she'd watched Brooke isolate Kevin for years and felt sick about it. The judge studied the evidence carefully. Tyler was too young for formal testimony, but the judge spoke with him privately. When Tyler walked out of chambers, he ran straight to me, grabbed my waist, and said loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear, "Grandma Dot, Mama said you moved away, but I knew you didn't." Brooke stared straight ahead. She didn't flinch, but her attorney closed his eyes. The ruling came 2 weeks later. Joint custody, 50-50. Brooke was ordered to return to work. The judge explicitly stated that my relationship with Tyler and Emma was to remain unrestricted and that any interference would constitute parental alienation with consequences for custody. The rental properties remained mine. The education trusts remained under my sole control. Every penny Harold and I had built stayed exactly where it belonged. Kevin moved into a small apartment near downtown Cedar Falls. 2 bedrooms, nothing fancy. We spent a Saturday assembling furniture from the hardware store, me holding shelves while he drilled, just like when he was 12 and we'd build birdhouses in Harold's workshop. "Tyler wants bunk beds," Kevin said, tightening a bolt, "so he can be on top and protect Emma on the bottom. He's 7 years old." "I know. He's trying to be the man of the house." Kevin's smile was sad but real. The first genuine smile I'd seen on his face in years. The first dinner at Kevin's apartment was spaghetti, with jarred sauce and garlic bread from a bag. Tyler talked nonstop about his new school and his new friend, Marcus. Emma mostly focused on getting noodles into her mouth instead of her hair. It was chaotic and imperfect and the best meal I'd had in 3 years. When I was leaving, Tyler hugged me and whispered, "You'll come back, right? You're not going to disappear?" "Never, sweetheart. I promise." Months passed. A new rhythm emerged. Weekly dinners at Kevin's apartment. Saturdays at the park or the Children's Museum. Tyler started calling me every Wednesday evening on Kevin's phone, just to tell me about his day. Emma, now 4, began drawing pictures for me. Stick figures labeled GRMA dot in purple crayon. A year after the divorce, Kevin called with unexpected news. "Mom, Brooke wants to talk to you." Every instinct said no, but Kevin said she'd been in therapy for 6 months, said she was different. I agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown with Kevin nearby. Brooke looked older, thinner. The polished, Instagram-perfect exterior had been replaced with something rawer and more human. She wore a plain sweater and no makeup. She looked exhausted in the way people look when they've been doing real emotional work. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Kevin said you wanted to talk." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup and stared into it for a long moment. "My therapist asked me to write down every person I've hurt, every relationship I've destroyed." She laughed bitterly. "The list was long. You're on it. Kevin's on it. Jean, Lisa, Kevin's friends, my own sister, all of them." She met my eyes. "I grew up in a trailer park outside Dubuque. My dad left when I was 6. My mom worked 2 jobs and we still couldn't afford school supplies. I was the kid who wore the same shoes until they fell apart." Her voice thickened. "I swore I'd never live like that again. And when I married Kevin, and you were so generous, I thought I'd finally made it. Access to money and stability and everything I'd never had. That's understandable. It's understandable, but it's not an excuse." She wiped her eyes. "When you set up those trusts and kept control, I felt rejected, like you didn't trust me. And instead of examining why you might have good reason for that, I decided you were the enemy." She took a shaky breath. "I tried to steal from my own children, Dorothy. I tried to take their futures so I could open a restaurant I wasn't even qualified to run, because I wanted people to see me as successful. I wanted to prove I wasn't that kid from the trailer park anymore." She straightened up. "I'm sorry. For all of it. for isolating Kevin, for threatening you, for trying to take the kids away, for the bank, for everything. I sat with that for a moment. I appreciate you saying this, Brooke. I don't know if I'll ever fully trust you again, but I respect the work you're doing. I don't need your trust, she said quietly. I just needed you to know that I understand now. What you did, why you did it. You were protecting my children from their own parents, and you were right. She left, and I sat there for a long time thinking about Harold, about what he'd said that last morning. Don't let anyone talk you out of what we built. 2 years after that birthday party, I sat in Frank Delaney's office reviewing the trust accounts. Tyler's fund had grown to $198,000. Emma's to $187,000. Lisa's kids' accounts were thriving too. Conservative growth, diversified investments, Frank said. By the time these kids turn 25, they're looking at $350,000 to $400,000 each. I thought about what those numbers meant. Not just money, but choices. Freedom. The ability to go to graduate school or start a business or put a down payment on a house without starting from zero. You held the line, Dorothy, Frank said. When it was the hardest thing in the world, you held the line. Last month, Tyler turned 9. Kevin threw a party at his apartment. Pizza, cake, a dozen screaming kids. I was there. Brooke was there too. We didn't talk much, but we were civil. We stayed on opposite sides of the room, both focused on making sure Tyler had a good day. At one point, Tyler pulled me into the hallway. Grandma Dot, can I tell you something? Always. He lowered his voice. Dad told me you have special money saved for me and Emma, for when we grow up. He said you protected it even when people tried to take it away. My heart squeezed. That's right, sweetheart. Will it be enough to do something cool? Like, really cool? Like what? I don't know yet. Maybe build houses like Grandpa Harold. Maybe something else. But I want to do something that matters. I knelt down and hugged him. It'll be enough, Tyler. Whatever you choose, it'll be enough. Thank you, Grandma Dot. You're welcome, baby. That night, after everyone left and my house was quiet, I sat at Harold's desk and opened the drawer where I kept 3 sealed envelopes. Letters to Tyler, Emma, and a joint letter to Lisa's kids. I'd written them a year ago, to be opened when each child turned 25 and received their trust funds. I unfolded Tyler's letter and read what I'd written to my future 25-year-old grandson. Dear Tyler, if you're reading this, you're a man now. I don't know if I'm still here to see it, but I hope I am. By now you know the story of this money. You know it caused pain in our family. You might have complicated feelings about it. I understand that. But I want you to know why I fought so hard to protect it. When you were 7, there were people who wanted to spend this money on things that wouldn't have lasted. If I'd let them, you'd be starting your adult life with nothing. No safety net, no options, no freedom to choose your own path. Your grandfather Harold once told me that money should build futures, not buy comfort. I didn't fully understand what he meant until I had to fight for it. This money is not meant to define you, Tyler. It's meant to free you. Free you to take risks. Free you to fail and try again. Free you to build something that matters, whatever that looks like for you. Use it wisely. And if you ever have children of your own, protect their futures the way I protected yours. Even when it's hard, even when it costs you. That's what love looks like sometimes. Not soft, not easy, but fierce and unbreakable. I love you. I always have. I always will. Grandma Dot. I sealed the letter, put it back in the drawer, and closed it gently. Then I went to bed in my quiet house, Harold's side still empty, and slept better than I had in years, because some promises are worth keeping, some lines are worth holding, and some futures are worth protecting, no matter what it costs you.